All right, so welcome to another deep dive. We're cracking open George Orwell's Burmese Days today.
Ooh, excellent choice.
It's going to be a fascinating one, I think.
Uh-huh.
We're really going to kind of dig into this book and see how Orwell, uses it to critique colonialism.
Yeah.
So have you ever, wondered what it was really like, for those folks living under British rule in Burma?
I mean, it's one of those periods of history that's so often glossed over. We get the big picture, but we miss the human stories.
Right, exactly. Get ready for some surprises.
I know. It's not always pretty. One of the things that's so striking about Burmese Days is how Orwell takes us beyond those historical narratives.
Right.
The ones that just tell us the dates and the battles. He shows us the personal struggles,
Right.
the moral compromises, the everyday tensions, all those things that are kind of simmering beneath the surface of colonial society.
It's so true, and he does it through some unforgettable characters.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's start with John Flory, our, I don't know if I call him a hero.
Yeah, hero might be pushing it.
Yeah.
He's definitely flawed.
Yeah, he's a British timber merchant in this, backwater town in Burma, Kyaktata.
Right.
What do you think?
I mean, he's this really interesting mix of contradictions, isn't he? He despises the empire, sees its hypocrisy, but at the same time, he can't quite seem to break free from it.
Totally.
He goes to the club, drinks with the Europeans, he even kind of looks down on the Burmese people.
Right, yeah.
But secretly, he longs for their acceptance. It's like he's trapped in this web of his own making.
Totally. Hates the system,
Yeah,
but benefits from it.
exactly.
Makes him complicit. And then there's this birthmark.
Oh, right.
That birthmark, Orwell doesn't just, throw that in there for no reason, right?
No, definitely not. That birthmark becomes this really powerful symbol
Right.
of Flory's inner turmoil. It's almost a physical manifestation of his insecurities.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Almost a mark of shame that he carries around with him.
It makes him feel like an outsider, even amongst his own people.
It makes you think about how colonialism doesn't just impact the colonized people, right?
Absolutely.
But it twists and warps the colonizers too.
It warps their sense of self, their relationships, their whole worldview even.
Totally.
I mean, you see that so clearly in Flory. The way he drinks heavily, frequents prostitutes.
Right.
It's almost as if he's trying to numb himself
Yeah.
to the moral ugliness of what's happening around him.
Yeah, almost as if he's trying to punish himself,
Yeah, that's a really good point.
for being part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of the system, we can't forget the European Club.
Oh, the infamous club.
Right. It's the heart of social life for the British in Kyaktata.
Right.
But it's stifling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Orwell describes it as this stiflingly hot, gossip-filled place,
Right.
full of rigid rules and just petty dramas.
Yeah.
It's not an accident, though.
Right.
I think the club itself becomes a symbol.
Okay, yeah. Almost like a microcosm of the British Empire.
I like that.
It's this little bubble that they've created
Right.
to try and recreate their world
Their own little world.
within this foreign land. They're clinging to their customs. They're clinging to their hierarchies,
Right.
anything to feel a sense of control in this kind of alien environment.
It's got to come at a cost, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, clinging to their ways, doesn't that just, make their anxieties and prejudices even worse?
For sure. I mean, think about it. They're surrounded by this vibrant Burmese culture, all this rich history and tradition, but they're so focused on maintaining their little bubble
Right.
that they become blind to it all. They wall themselves off physically and emotionally.
It's like living in a gilded cage of their own making.
Exactly. And it's within this cage that we see Flory struggling to maintain his position, grappling with his own desires and this need for approval.
Yeah, it's tough. Okay, so we have this flawed individual trapped in this flawed system. Now let's bring in Dr. Veraswami.
Okay.
He's ambitious, he's educated, he's an Indian doctor.
Right.
And he dreams of joining the European Club.
Ah, yes.
He believes it's the key to, equality with the British.
The doctor story adds a whole other layer to Orwell's critique, I think.
Right.
It illustrates the complexities of social mobility, and assimilation under colonialism.
Yeah.
He's caught in this impossible situation.
Yeah.
Considered too westernized by many of his fellow Indians, but he knows he'll never truly be accepted by the British either.
Right. He's walking this tightrope.
Exactly.
And he's relying on Flory's friendship
Yeah.
to gain that kind of prestige.
Right.
But then you bring in Kyin.
Oh, yes. Kyin, he complicates things even further.
Yes, he does.
This cunning Burmese magistrate pulling strings behind the scenes.
Well, he's playing everybody right.
It's what's so fascinating about him, He uses the sister, the one created by the British, to his own advantage. He understands their weaknesses, their prejudices, and he exploits them masterfully to climb the social ladder and to take down his rivals.
So he's ambitious.
Oh, absolutely.
He's power hungry, just like some of the British officials.
Yeah, he's playing their game.
But he's forced to play by their rules, using their system against them.
It's brilliant.
It is.
He's a master manipulator, anonymous letters, spreading rumors. He even orchestrates a fake rebellion.
Wow.
To make himself look like a hero.
Wow.
And discredit his enemies.
It's like Orwell is holding up a mirror to the British, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Showing them how their own tactics can be used against them, raising some serious questions about who really holds the power.
Exactly. It's not as simple as it seems. On the surface, the British, they have the official authority.
Right.
But characters like Kyin demonstrate that true power can be much more subtle.
Much more subversive. Okay, so we have these fascinating characters all tangled up in this web of, ambition, prejudice, cultural clashes.
Right.
And then, as if things weren't complicated enough, Elizabeth arrives on the scene.
Oh, Leah.
Young, beautiful, fresh off the boat from England,
Yes.
completely clueless about Burmese culture.
Her arrival is like a catalyst, it sets everything into motion.
Interesting.
She represents this kind of idealized vision of English womanhood, the kind of purity and innocence that the British and Concocted long for. But her presence also exposes the deep chasm between that image and the messy, often brutal realities of colonial life.
So she brings all these expectations and assumptions.
Yeah.
And they're about to collide head-on with the complexities of Calcutta.
Exactly. And this collision is going to have ripple effects, impacting the dynamics between Flory, Dr. Veraswami, even Kyin himself.
It's all connected.
Yes.
And of course, Flory falls head over heels.
Of course.
Desperately wants to impress her,
Yes. Right. And she seems drawn to him, too. Maybe out of loneliness, maybe curiosity.
Right.
But this love story, as we know, it's doomed from the start. Orwell isn't giving us a fairy tale romance here.
Right.
He's using this love triangle to explore something much deeper, much darker.
Okay.
The themes of colonialism, identity, belonging, the corrosive effects of power.
I see. So we got this love triangle brewing. We got all this kind of racial tension, scheming going on.
Yeah.
It's a powder keg.
It is.
Waiting to explode.
It is. Oh, it explodes all right. In a way you almost don't want to see but can't look away from.
It's like a car crash. You should look away, but
Yeah.
Flory makes just one bad decision after another.
Oh, yeah.
It's painful.
Desperate to win Elizabeth over, completely loses himself.
Like that whole thing at the Puy.
Oh, God. The Puy.
For those who haven't read the book, that's a traditional Burmese theatrical performance.
Yeah.
And Flory gets so drunk, makes an absolute fool of himself.
Yeah, the cultural insensitivity is just, oof.
Major cringe. And then the leopard skin.
Oh, don't even get me started on the leopard skin.
Tries to give it to Elizabeth as a gift.
It just highlights how completely out of touch he is with Burmese culture, with Elizabeth's sensibilities.
With reality, maybe?
Probably. It's like he's trying so hard to fit into this mold, the one he thinks Elizabeth wants, that he just abandons any sense of who he is.
And then Verrall shows up.
Oh, Verrall. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Right. Handsome young military officer. Everything Flory isn't.
The epitome of traditional British masculinity. Confident, assertive, totally at ease in this colonial setting.
And of course, Elizabeth is smitten.
Instantaneously.
So classic love triangle. Really.
On the surface, yeah. But it's so much more than that. Orwell's using this to dig into something deeper.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about identity, belonging, how those things get warped under colonialism. Flory isn't just after Elizabeth. He's after validation.
He's trying to escape that self-loathing we talked about.
Exactly. Wants to belong, to fit in a world that's increasingly alien to him. And then you have Elizabeth.
So naive.
She's this perfect example of a certain type of British woman who went to the colonies with a very specific idea of what it would be like. Adventure, romance, escape from the constraints of England.
But Burma's not a fairy tale, is it?
Not even close. The reality is harsh. There's racial tension, violence simmering under the surface, things Elizabeth is totally unprepared for.
And Flory, he's not her knight in shining armor, is he?
No. As the story progresses, she sees him for what he is, weak, pathetic. And Veral, he represents that strength and stability she craves.
So Flory's left with nothing. His hopes, his dreams.
And he makes a devastating choice.
Yeah. Takes his own life.
It's the culmination of his despair, his disillusionment.
Makes you wonder if things had been different.
But they weren't. Flory's a victim of his circumstances, trapped in a system that stripped him of his humanity, unable to form genuine connections. It's tragic.
And it really highlights the psychological impact of colonialism, not just on the colonized.
But on the colonizers, too. Orwell makes us confront that human cost.
And it's not just Flory who suffers. Dr. Veraswami.
Heartbreaking. What happens to him?
He was so loyal. Tried to bridge the gap between cultures.
And he becomes a scapegoat, a victim of the very prejudices he was trying to overcome.
Falsely accused of a crime, his reputation ruined.
Loses everything. Social standing, friends, his hope for a better future, all because of lies and the manipulations of those in power.
It's like Orwell showing us that the system is designed to keep people like Dr. Veraswami down.
No matter how hard they try. A brutal indictment of the hypocrisy, the cruelty at the heart of the British Empire.
It makes you think, doesn't it, about how those power dynamics still play out today.
Oh, absolutely. Burmese Days is as relevant now as it was when it was written. It's a story that sticks with you, makes you question, makes you want to understand these issues better.
Yeah, it really does. It makes you think, like, this isn't just a historical critique, right?
Definitely not.
This feels so relevant to, like, today.
Yeah.
When we think about all the discussions about race and power and identity.
Absolutely. Orwell's novel, it gives us this lens to examine those same issues, but in a contemporary context.
Yeah, it's forcing us to ask these hard questions, like, how far have we come?
Right.
Since the days of empire, are we really free from the legacies of colonialism?
These are big questions, and they're not always comfortable to confront.
Not at all.
But I think that's part of what makes Orwell so important.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from those difficult conversations.
So true. He forces us to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And examine, like, our own complicity in systems that are perpetuating injustice and inequality.
Yeah.
And that's true, whether we're talking about, the overt racism of the British Empire or the more subtle forms of prejudice that still exist today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Burmese Days, what's, like, the one key takeaway you hope our listeners kind of walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that colonialism, it wasn't just a historical event. It's an ongoing process with lasting consequences. Right. And those are things we're still grappling with.
We are.
And Orwell's novel, it gives us this framework for understanding those complexities.
Okay.
And for challenging the systems that perpetuate inequality.
So it's a call to action.
I think so, yes.
It reminds us that we all have a responsibility to engage with these issues, to learn from the past.
Right.
And work towards a more just and equitable future.
Exactly. By understanding the mistakes of the past, we can try to create a better future. A future where those same injustices aren't repeated.
Really well said.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Burmese Days. We hope you found it insightful, maybe thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit challenging.
I hope so.
It's a book that deserves to be read and discussed and debated.
Absolutely. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep exploring. Read more about the history of colonialism. Challenge your own biases. Talk to people about these issues.
That's right. Keep those mental gears turning. And until next time, happy reading.